Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Appreciate you streaming in. We've got Gio Capadia coming up in less than 20 minutes now, so please feel free to stick around. Johnny Mac, shame on me, I had forgotten. I knew the Eagles had lost one game prior to Sunday. That's pretty damn good. And that, of course, was the Commanders, and I didn't immediately have it kick in as to who they played the next week. And that was the Colts in Indianapolis, a game that they won,
Played
but
poorly.
they had to fight back and win. Is there any conclusions that you draw from how the Eagles respond to a loss? We've had two of them. There's only been one that we can draw this conclusion from. So that's pretty damn good when you only got one. You're kind of narrow focused on how do they respond from that game in Indianapolis was a W, but it was one that they had to rally to be able to pull out of it. This is a different team because they've gone further in the season, and B, we don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to play. We know Lane Johnson's not going to play. We know Avonte Maddox isn't going to play. So you have to factor in the injuries to some very key players that they have. Can we draw anything from what transpired early on this season?
I will say I hope not, because that might have been the worst, certainly the worst offensive game they played all season, I would think. Jalen had to carry them in the fourth quarter, and it was basically with the running game, with the quarterback running game. That was the game he put the team on his shoulders and dragged them over the finish line. And they're not going to have Jalen Hurts, most likely. I shouldn't say that. If it's grade one, maybe he's back out there. But if I were a betting man, and I'm not, but if I were, I think Gardner's going to play, but that's just speculation. And we'll see how that shakes out. But if they play like that, now they're playing at home. That game was on the road, so
True.
That's different as well. That's a big difference. If anything, they're not great opponents either, but the Saints are probably better than the Colts. So I don't know. It's such a small sample size. To me, it might be simple, but it really is true. And one of the offensive coaches said it. Don't turn it over 4 times. There's room for error. You could turn it over once. You could turn it over twice. Don't turn it over 4 times. That's what the two losses have in common. 4 turnovers, 4 turnovers. And the Eagles had basically gone wire to wire with the best turnover ratio in the NFL. Now they're second. Now they're behind Dallas because they were -3 against Dallas. No coincidence there. They got to take care of the football better. And I think if they take care of the football better, they'll be fine. I really do.
Do you have confidence that Gardner Minshew can play an error-free game this weekend?
No, but again, you can make an error or two. Just don't make 4 egregious errors. I think there is room for miscues. Everybody has them in the NFL, but you can't have that dramatic difference. It's all the talk we have, and that's what we do, and there's nothing wrong with it, about the zone defense and about 24 for 24 and all that. What Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon, between all the spin, what they do say consistently, week in and week out, whether they win or lose, turnovers, explosive plays, turnovers, explosive plays, turnovers, explosive plays. Those are the 2 stats that point towards winning or losing. They were 10-10 in explosive plays, so that was even. They were -3 in turnovers against the Cowboys. And again, if you go back to the first loss, they turned it over 4 times. I think they were -3 as well. I would have to double check that. That's the one thing they say. That's the one thing they believe in, and it has turned out to be true almost every single week. And that's the common thread between the 2 losses. Take care of the football.
Right. And oh, by the way, and it was big and it was early, but they did get the Cowboys to turn it over just once. The Josh Sweat pick six was
It's a
very
great
early in the
play too.
game,
Great play.
and they never got another turnover themselves. So, despite the emphasis that the coaching staff puts on it, that this is a key component of their game, either the Cowboys were good enough and took good enough care of the ball, or the Eagles weren't Johnny on the spot enough to be able to come up with a turnover. The Saints will turn it over. That seems to me that's the game. This game for the upcoming game against the Saints should be decided by the defense. The maximum number of points that the Saints are going to score are what? 17? Will you go as high as 20? Do you think the Saints can get 20 points against this defense?
Boy, I don't see a lot of explosion there. Now, I shouldn't say. Well, most of it is tied to the quarterback. I mean, let's be honest. You know, the Kamara is. We know what type of player he is. Chris Olave has been a really good rookie. Now, as Ed pointed out, there's no Michael Thomas that's hurt. Taysom Hill's a pain in the you know what. They utilize him in so many different ways. Um, they have some good players, but they're limited at quarterback. And yeah, I mean, he's not going to throw the ball all over the lot. If he does, you got some issues. So yeah, they should be pretty limited.
And have you seen the Saints? I know that nobody's put out any injury reports yet. I guess today would be the same first one, and it will be only an estimation for the Eagles because they're walking through. Olave didn't play last week. And between you and I, that's the only thing that's saving Nicky Loomis's face is the fact that the guy that they moved up for to take was Chris Olave, and he's having an outstanding season with not a great quarterback throwing him the football. I don't even know if he's going to play this week against the Eagles.
Yeah, it's possible. We'll have to see. We'll get the first indication as you mentioned today. He's poised to go over 1,000 yards, so he's had a very good rookie season. Obviously, they still have something to play for. So it's not like they're in a situation where they would shut him down. If he can play, I assume he will play. But yeah, we need to see if he's healthy, and if he's not healthy, then they're even more up against it. I mean, it's they don't have much, and I believe it was a hamstring. So those are tricky for the bass guys, as Avante Maddox always says. A little bit trickier hamstring for bass guys. So he's a bass guy. So yeah, something to keep an eye on.
And again, with the Eagles restructuring their secondary defense, we won't know about Tazar. Well, we should know something. You made a very good point earlier in the show. The Eagles will have to notify you guys if Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's practice window is opened up. There's no reason that you wouldn't open it up today. We all, from time to time, take our pimping shots at Nick Sirianni that he likes to withhold information for competitive advantage. Well, that would be pretty foolish when you've got a guy who hasn't played in a month, and we're not going to announce yet that he's in practice mode. Well, you can't practice. So you can't break the rules. You can't keep that under wraps. So if he practices today, that's a pretty good indicator. Not a definitive indicator, because you remember just 2 weeks ago, Dallas Goedert got activated for practice prior to the Bears game. And he practiced all week, and we got to Sunday, and they said, yeah, not yet. We're going to give Dallas another week. So it doesn't definitively say that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's going to play if he's activated for practice this week, but it's a pretty damn good indicator, is it not?
Well, and I think it's a better indicator that he's going to be back. I'm not even concerned as much with this week. I'm concerned, because of the way Nick spoke on Monday. I'm concerned long term. If it's not healing correctly, and I'm no expert on lacerated kidneys, then you start talking about, well, is he going to be back at all? Is he going to be back for the playoffs? if they start his practice window, he's going to be back for the playoffs. And I think that is the bigger thought process for me. Just, you know, and in the break, maybe I'll pop up the transcript and I can give you the exact terminology he used, but it was a little bit weird the way he described it, and kind of raised an antenna, typically because he talks a typical way about injuries, and he was way more murky about that because it's not a sprained ankle, it's not a hamstring. We're just talking about hamstring with Chris Olave. It's not a traditional football injury. So I don't know. Maybe I read too much into it, but he brought up CAT scans, and we got to see CAT scan. I mean, it's not a traditional injury, so little bit of a concern from that point.
And I'll give you one thing that some people might think of as a concern, and we don't know if the Eagles are even going to do this. It seems to make more sense to me than anything else because, again, apologies to Josiah Scott's family if they're watching. He was not good on Sunday. If you get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back, I would move him to the slot and keep Blankenship at safety. That's just me. Now, you're asking a guy to do something he hasn't been doing for a while. But if you remember at the beginning of the season, when they got their hands on him coming in from New Orleans, they were moving him to safety. And Jody McDonald and John McMullen both sat here and said, really? You're going to throw him that deep into the end of the pool with no practice? They got him after the preseason was over and done with, without even getting out there and practicing with them. That's kind of a big ass they're putting on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He did it seamlessly. He came in and looked like he had been playing safety for the Eagles for 2 or 3 years. So you talk about adaptability. I think we've seen enough out of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson that even if they move him back to his old position, not like he's never played it before, he's played plenty of slot corner. He did it mostly in the Saints uniform. That doesn't scare me a little bit. Does it scare you at all?
No, I think that's an interesting decision the Eagles have to make moving forward. How they're going, if Devonta is not going to be there, how they're going to figure that out. And that if CJ's there, I mean, it's kind of like, would you rather have Josiah Scott in the lineup or Reed Blankenship? After this week, people are going to default to Reed Blankenship. I'm not sure if the Eagles will default that way, but we'll see. It's definitely a conversation they have to have. I think the hope is that Devonta Maddox will be out there, but and they could, what the interesting part was, Jody, at the very end there, they developed a hybrid role for Devonta, who was playing safety and base and nickel when they needed a nickel. So he was playing in Chicago. I think he played every play. It's the first time. Now, I thought that had to do with the injuries because they didn't have Reed back more than that. But in Dallas, they kept it going. They kept it going until he left. So, they liked what they saw of that hybrid role. Maybe CJ could do a similar thing and play safety when they have base out there, and then move to nickel when they need a nickel in the absence. So that's probably thrown into the pool as well. But I did find it. So here's what Nick said earlier this week when he was asked about CJ. First of all, we have to see how everything is healing in there. This is a little bit of a harder one to track because you can't just, you have to go in there and see, right? You have to get CAT scans and see how everything is healing in there. So we'll see where he is. It wasn't like, oh, he'll be back at some point. It was a little bit weird, the way he talked about it.
I think you're right in saying it's a different type of injury. That's not I don't, and again, you remember you were there. You heard him say it. There, from time to time, can be a change between the way you read something when you're watching a guy say it verbally and when you're trying to read it off the page. I took that as, we don't really know. This is an injury that more people need to be consulted and be in the loop on than usual. So we're going to handle it the way we have to handle it. And it's a little bit different than we do with high ankle sprains and hamstrings and stuff like that. It is, I'm not going to pick apart Sirianni's statement. I'll take him at his word and at face value that it's a little bit more difficult situation to have to deal with because of the type of injury we're talking about.
And that's why I think today is such a big day. Not for Sunday. Sunday's not as relevant to me, but because this is the first day they can start his practice window. If they start his practice window, that'll tell me, all right, he's going to be back. I don't know when, but he's going to be back. If they don't start it, then I start, thinking
we're back. We're back in the Nick's going to attempt to explain where the injury sits when you guys next get a chance to talk to him tomorrow. All right. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. That makes us Mac and Mac on Birds 365. We'll put a quickie timeout in here and then be joined by Sheil Kapadia. Always good talking to Sheil from The Ringer. It's podcast Philly Special. His Philly Special podcast is a good one for Eagle fans to be able to check out. Looking forward to talking to Sheil Kapadia next here on Birds 365.